All right. Skype tells me to avoid legal snags by informing you that you're all being recorded and keep it PG. But what we're going to do now is we're going to get into some of the flow that I mentioned. Now, you can log into Flow with a Microsoft account. There are things that you can do with Flow for free. Okay, the Flow that I'm going to show you did not cost me anything. There are limits on what you can do with Flow for various reasons. So we'll talk about that. I'm going to go to My Flows, and I will show you this one for those of you that are in the room. So again, I kind of talked through the scenario, right? We're all at Ignite. We're doing our thing, doing different sessions. We got people who focus on Azure at Catapult. I'm a SharePoint person, Office 365 person. We've got people who do other technologies at Catapult. We're a consulting firm. So we do. So we've got all these people all over the place. But now, the way things are going in the world with technology, we're all talking to each other more. The SharePoint guys are talking to the Azure guys because I need to do infrastructure stuff or put messages on queues to automate processes or whatever. So we're all talking more. So I wanted to have a way to centralize things we thought were important. Okay, and it's literally just aggregating tweets in a centralized location. Some people use Teams more than Yammer. Teams is newer than Yammer, right? Yammer's still not fully adopted. Teams is still being adopted. So it's kind of like, well, should I post these in Teams or Yammer? Well, why not both? For those people who look at Yammer, they'll get them. And if you focus on Teams, you'll get them too. So let's take a look at this flow. I'll go into Edit Flow. And the thought process here is pretty straightforward. It's steps and actions, conditions and actions, and things like that. So if I open these up, we start by saying, when a new tweet is posted, if it contains the text Catapult Ignite, we want to go to the next step. So it's saying, go find tweets that contain Catapult Ignite, and then do something with it. What's next? So it'll go out and get the information, hold on to it, and pass it to the next step for me. I don't need to worry about the details of how it's going out to Twitter and getting that information. I'm just logged into Twitter, and I've got my flow, Eric Skaggs flow, connected to Eric Skaggs Twitter connection, searching for Catapult Ignite. Now, when that happens, the next step would be post it to Microsoft Teams, which you can see is in preview. And now I have this red warning that says to check my info and permissions. This was working. Things probably changed on the Microsoft side over the last several months that has caused some issue. This flow has also been disabled because Ignite's over and I don't need it anymore. But you can see some of the parameters here. What team in Teams do you want to post this to? And then within that team, which channel? So we can take a look at Teams. All right. Welcome. So Teams is opening up. A lot of these newer tools like Teams, there's a lot of concern around governance and how do I do this, that, or the other? And the answer is always it depends. Different people work different ways, and there's 10 different ways to do one thing. But here's the Ignite 2017 team. So we created a team for the folks that were going to Ignite. And there's a general channel that just comes with your team. So the channel is kind of where conversations happen organically and ad hoc. You can add different tabs and you can integrate different things. I created a Twitter Catapult Ignite channel in the team so that when things are posted to Teams, they're not just posted general organic conversation, kind of interrupting other people's conversations. They're all isolated here. So you can come to this channel in this team and view all those tweets, and they all look like they're me because they're posting as my account because that's what's connected. So in any case, some cool stuff. the next part of this is doing something very similar with Yammer. Okay, we have a group called Microsoft Ignite Conference, so we're going to post a tweet to that in the network ID for Catapult Systems. Pretty straightforward. What's really cool about this are the dynamic pieces. So you see this chunk that says tweeted by, tweet text, tweeted by, tweet text. Same format for both platforms. And then I manually typed in the word tweeted, right? So that way it had some sort of a consistent format. But as you go through this, let me try control. That's not going to work. Control 1. Forgive me as I zoom in and out. I'm hoping this comes through okay. But because we're connected to Twitter, and Twitter is Twitter, and we know what Twitter is, it has an API that we can tap into, it exposes things that we can grab. Right? So somebody posts a tweet. What can you get? The description, the location, URLs, the name of the user, and so on and so forth. Flow already knows all this. I didn't do this. Flow knows about Twitter and what it exposes, and I can now use it. I can just say, you know what? When someone posts a tweet, I want to grab the name of their user, so that's tweeted by, and then down here somewhere is the tweet text option. You know, the content of the tweet. So-and-so said this. I want to know that, so it's because it's important at the time. David has a question?
So when you were building this flow with a list of functions, you chose Twitter?
Yeah, so the question is, was there a list of functions and did I choose Twitter? Yes, I did. So once we get, I'll talk through this and then I will, we'll create a new flow and I'll kind of show you how the process goes.
Great.
More folks are coming in. Thanks for joining. Talking about flow. All right. So yeah, I mean, there's a ton of stuff that you can do. This is one example where I just thought it would be fun to try some of the newer technology. I hadn't really done much with flow. Let's build something that might be useful. We ended up using it, and all our tweets are now in one place, and no one's looked at them yet, which is what I expected, quite frankly. But that's okay. So let's close that out. I do have a couple other flows out here that we'll take a quick look at. Yeah, see, one of my connections is disconnected. We're not going to fix anything right now. So this is similar. We have an internal community of practice at Catapult called the SharePoint Community Practice, go figure. And so I was put in charge of the community Twitter account for it. So like I can log into Twitter and tweet as this SharePoint COP user, and then I didn't want to have to copy paste the different things, so I kind of did the same thing. I said, you know what? Every so often, post a tweet and then copy it over to Yammer. So this had the little alarm clock here representing the recurrence. Right? Once a day, post something, what have you. This next one, I hope we have time to talk about later. But this is that PnP provisioning kind of engine experience I mentioned a little bit ago. I don't want to get into that one just yet because that will take the rest of the day. But you can typically start by going to My Flows. And you'll notice this is a change I wasn't even aware of until recently. They have My Flows and now they have Team Flows. So you remember that I talked about those tweets that I had copied over to Teams were being posted as me because it was all tied to my Twitter account. I think now this gives us the ability to be more generic and have a flow that's not tied to a specific user. Because if you're working for an organization and you create a flow and then you say, oh, I'm going to go join this other company, your accounts get deactivated. Does your flow still run? I guess it could because these are third-party things, right? Twitter, you can't block my access to Twitter. Not as my employer. So, interesting. So there's a couple different ways to create a flow. You can just create a blank flow, or you can look at some of the templates. Or you can, I think if you just go to the flow homepage, they'll show you some common things. multi-step, approve requests, conditions, using on-prem data. So here are some featured ones. Talking through these. Get a push notification when you get an email from your boss. Now, hopefully you have email on your phone anyway, but I mean, if you want that extra nudge, there's something for that. Get daily weather reports. Okay. Create events on Google Calendar. If you've used IFTTT, this is very similar. This is like IFTTT for the enterprise. IFTTT stands for if this then that. Let's take a quick look at that. IFTTT.com. I've got a bunch of applets out here. Some run, some don't. Oh, they've got me logged in with a different account right now. But you know, one of the things I have is when I travel, I always forget where I went and what I did and who I was with. So when I travel, what I like to do is like check in. You can use Facebook or Swarm or Foursquare or whatever. Check in, right? Oh, check in. I'm fancy, whatever. Some people find it annoying. I think it's kind of fun. But I have an applet set up in IFTTT tied to my accounts and credentials and everything, so that when I go somewhere and I check in, a copy of that check-in is added as an event to my Google Calendar. I don't use Google Calendar for anything other than that. So when I want to remember, where was I last year? Or what was the name of that restaurant or whatever, I go to my calendar. And I can see where I was. And, oh yeah, I was at Torchy's Tacos in Austin. Fantastic. Kind of cool. So there's a lot of stuff you can do through IFTTT. And Flow is the enterprise edition for business, right? It's the officially sanctioned process automation tool for businesses. There's a ton of things you can do for yourself to make your life easier, more convenient, whatever. But there's also some things that we can do to actually help our business, which I can talk about the P&P thing later. We'll see that. Well, let's go over to My Flows. And if I choose Create from Template, it's pretty straightforward. It will start giving me a list of templates. So generally you can come out here and just say, oh, that's kind of cool. Maybe I'd use that or not. Maybe you have an idea of what you already want to do. So at the top you can search. Okay, so I might type email. I get a bunch of things related to email. Or, let's see, is there anything for Bitly in here? Links and RSS feeds. Here we go. So when a bit link is created, post a tweet with the bit link URL. I don't know if you want to do that. It's up to you to decide, right? But it's an option. It's something that you could do. These are the templates. I typically have an idea of what I want to create before I come out here, and I start with a blank template. So create from blank, and then start with one of these popular triggers, sure, or again, search all the connectors and triggers and everything else. There's one here called schedule. So let's say, I don't know, every year on New Year's, we'll tweet Happy New Year. I don't know. So we'll choose this schedule recurrence. Now it doesn't go up to a year. I can do a month. Maybe I say every 12 months. What was there? Oh, enter custom value. Year. So, okay, let's see. We'll take a decade. Every 12 decades. Let's see if we can put in year and it stays. That's interesting. No values matching your search. And then you can go into advanced options. You can set this for a particular time zone. And then the start time's kind of funky here. You do have to follow this format. And if I remember, when you click in there, when you start typing, it all goes away. So it's kind of like take a screenshot. So 27-1231 T for time. And then we'll just do 11:59:59 Z. So just before midnight, tweet Happy New Year. Okay, so we'll give the flow a title. Tweet Happy New Year. And now you can save your work as you go. Should contain at least one trigger and one action. So I've got the trigger, but what am I supposed to do? So that's where I would add a new step, add an action or a condition. Let's just add an action. Our logic here has no conditions. It's every year we're going to do it. And then we just search for Twitter. Okay. There's all sorts of actions related to Twitter. Get followers, get following, so on and so forth. Let's go to actions. Post a tweet is what we want to do. So it's loading. What do we want to post? Happy New Year. Other options? Do we want to include some media? No, we don't. We'll just say post Happy New Year. Saving flow. Now, my account, I'm logged in as Eric Skaggs at catapultsystems.com. I've already set up my connection to Twitter. If I were doing this new, having never done this before, it's going to say, well, you want to use a Twitter action, what's your Twitter account? You need to log in. You need to connect Flow to your Twitter service so this will happen, right? And so now every year at 11:59, Eric Skaggs at Catapult Systems is going to tweet, Happy New Year. And that's something you can do, right? It doesn't really help anybody, but yeah. That's a good question. The question here in the room was, is Flow similar to SharePoint 2010 workflows or SharePoint Designer custom workflows? Yeah, I would say it's just above and beyond. I don't know, because it's not tied specifically to SharePoint. You can leverage it for SharePoint, but I think it's much more user-friendly. As far as which one is it closer to, I would have to probably say probably SharePoint Designer workflows, but those are creating SharePoint Designer workflows is still much more technically involved than these are. Right. Yep. Sure. So a comment in the room was, that there's a lot of similarity between some of the terminology we see in SharePoint Designer workflows and these flows, which is true. But yeah, I don't like to think of these as SharePoint workflows as much as they are just flows, just workflows. David?
They have all the SharePoint functionality.
Yeah, so right, let's take a look at that. David's bringing up a good point that there are SharePoint actions and things that we can do with Flow. So I might create a new flow, and obviously here's an item in SharePoint. When an item is created, we're all familiar with alerts in SharePoint, I hope, which is that server-side email that sends you the horrible-looking message that contains all that information you don't care about. So we could come out here and say, you know what, let's use a SharePoint trigger. And when somebody adds something to, let me go out to the intranet. And we'll take a look at, I don't know, here's a configuration list that we have stuff in. I guess I can make this bigger. Let's paste in the URL of the site, so cat.sharepoint.com. And then what's the list name? Come on. It's going to be my custom value. Okay. Cannot resolve issuer token. I think my SharePoint connector is a little odd here. Let's go. I'm connected as eric.skaggs at catapultsystems.com. Okay, new idea. AZ SharePoint Pros. Another browser in private. My flow's out here. Different account. We'll see what happens. Say when an item is created in SharePoint. See, now it's asking me sign in to create a connection to SharePoint because I'm not currently connected to SharePoint with this account. Although it did just resolve that for me, so there's that too. Let's paste in. The URL of the site, custom value, what do we have in here? Documents is the name of it. Shared documents is the URL. Let's give it a shot. Create that flow. Have to have an action. Email. Office 365, Outlook, send email. Connecting to Outlook in Office 365. 2. I'm just going to use my AZ SharePoint Pros.com subject.
Because the email is going to come from you, not from SharePoint.
Right, the email is going to come from
Whoever created the flow.
whoever is connected to the flow, which is why, team flows might be more relevant and useful because it's not Eric Skaggs at Catapult sending you an email, it's the service account. I don't know if that's possible, but that would be preferential, I would think, Subject, something happened in SharePoint. And you can see I can use dynamic content out here. Let's put that in the body. So something was created, and we want to include a link to the item. I mean, you can add text in there too to kind of format things a little bit, but you probably want to keep this short and to the point and put some content out here. So let's.
You know if there's any way, say, to do and use this as like an aggregate, whereas once a day or once a week, it will send out the aggregate. These are all the items that were added to the library.
Oh,
in the last 24 hours.
It's a good question. So the question in the room is essentially, if I reword it a little bit, is there a way to send out weekly or perhaps monthly bulk notifications about, instead of, hey, 30 things were just added, here's all your emails, how about one per day or one per week?
Yep.
And I don't know. I'm sure there's a way to do it, but I don't know if it's this easy, right, where you just point and click. But you can see my flow was created. So now it's done. And if we can try to run it and see what happens. Let's upload a screenshot of the Fuse mobile app to the library. There it is, a few seconds ago. Now what's cool about Flow is I'm looking at the flow, the run history is right here, So once it's run, I'll have some history to look at. I can click on See All. It actually ran 10 seconds ago and it says it succeeded. So how can I confirm that? Check my email. So we're still in Office 365 land. That's not right. Oh, okay. I'll go to my Office 365 email. Let's see. Oh boy. This is very interesting. It's got me logged in. Yes, with a different account. So let's log in with the right account.
It seems somewhat limited of the body portion of that tag. Like, I know with div tags, I can do quite a bit as far as like custom code and CSS for the notification emails.
Yeah, the body text is limited to some degree. So that's a good point. Oh, it's my mail.
Well, it's the div tags, it's SharePoint. We don't do SharePoint down. Div tags to do all workflows and we do edit up
Yeah, I'm sure that I don't know what the formatting limitations are in those emails.
Yeah.
Hey, here it is.
This one, we can't, this one we do very much at all, other than edit
Well,
a
that's
couple
what
variables.
I was wondering, is it more
There it is.
up direct,
Yeah.
more direct flows that are coming from an item to an item, or unless the tag is so customized?
I'm sorry, what's the question?
Well, I noticed with online, so they've been making things to be a little more for a general user. So I think that they make this to be a little more simplified in how you're going from an item to an item instead of more customization. It's more simplified flows, more
it's-
simplified workflow.
It's much more simplified, yes. I mean, like I said earlier, SharePoint Designer, you can get pretty complex with those.
Right.
And then products like Nintex, if you've got them, use them because that's what they do well, right? That's the reason you're paying for it. And it's a product that was made to be workflow for SharePoint and integrate with other things, and it's really great. But this is, if Nintex isn't available, what can you do? How can you automate things and connect different services and systems and so on and so forth? So.
Do you have to go into Visual, like use Visual Studio or something like that to get more? Because I was reading a little about that you can't get super customized.
Yeah, you can only customize what's available, right?
Very,
So it is limiting in that degree, and that's why I would encourage folks to have an idea of what you want to build before you try to build it, because you are limited in flow to whatever the API is exposed. There are other services out there that are not yet integrated with Flow that may be in the future. I don't know. And as new companies come up and new services are created, we'll see things being added to the Flow conditions, actions, and triggers that make sense. But you can see, yeah, that email is not very useful. It's not formatted well. The link is not actually a link, maybe because it's jammed up against the time. I don't know. But we ran a flow and it worked. So now it's like, well, what's a better idea? What's a more grand scenario, right? And so we'll come. I'd like to come back to that at the end. I'll do another video for that one separate from this one. But let's check our conversation here. Oh, SP Jeff saying hi from the Shy. Hey Jeff. Okay. So let's just take a quick look at some of the other stuff in Flow. Triggers, actions and conditions are fine. I'd like to look at the triggers because that's what initiates what you can do. There's really a ton of stuff that you can do. So one, I mean, obviously they list the popular things here. Scheduling is useful. We've always scheduled things with like Windows Task Scheduler or whatever. So you can schedule things to happen. RSS. RSS has been around forever, right? It's one of the earliest web protocols out there, and people have done a lot of stuff with RSS. Well, you can integrate RSS feeds in here and do something with those as well. Is there a trigger to auto-sync a document library to OneDrive for Business? That's a good question. I'm not aware of one, but we can search, right? So we can do OneDrive and see what we get. So there's OneDrive for Business or just OneDrive. We'd be focused on OneDrive for Business. So when a file is created, this is all on the OneDrive side. So these are triggers. These are things that happen in OneDrive to trigger something to happen elsewhere, right? So if we want to sync a library from SharePoint to OneDrive, we probably want to look at SharePoint for the trigger part. So for a selected item, files being created, so they do kind of follow a nice consistent format when a file is this, that, or the other. When an item is created or modified. So I don't see anything in here about syncing document libraries, auto-syncing. So I would say right down here, Microsoft is saying, you tell us what you want. Go out to user voice and make a recommendation. And then it'll get voted in by the community. You know, other people will see these things. If you haven't gone out on user voice and looked at it, I recommend you do. There are some good suggestions out there, and Microsoft kind of plans what they're going to do next based on that kind of stuff. So it's cool to see that.
It depends on what he wants to sync of. So if he's wanting to know when a file is created in SharePoint, it's now going to alert you over to OneDrive.
Yeah, if it's based
There
on...
might be some action there depending on what was going to be done in SharePoint or what he wants to sync.
Right, and so my understanding of this question here was syncing an entire document library, which I don't see anything in the flow for that. If we're talking about, you know, doing something like when a file is created in SharePoint, copy it to OneDrive. So here's the SharePoint part. Let's see if we can do an action for OneDrive. Copy file. So I would connect to SharePoint and OneDrive, and then point the SharePoint trigger, add a library, and then when something's added there, it'd be copied to OneDrive. So it's a kind of a roundabout way of a document library sync, but it's not entirely the same thing. Any custom dev options for Flow connectors trigger? Yes. I think if you are out, and I'll have to check on this real quick. Connectors, partners. I don't know if you have to be a partner to create something, but there is a section out here somewhere for developers, so that if you want to connect to a service that's not already out here, well, somebody's got to build that. Somebody's got to write that and create that connector and make it general so that it can be used and consumed by Flow. So there are ways to do that. I've not done that myself, but if there's a service that you would want to bring in and integrate with Flow, I'm sure that there's some way to do that. All right. I wanted to show one trigger in particular. I think is pretty useful. Can be pretty useful. And HTTP. There's all sorts of, we pass data around the web all the time. So when a request is made, and that request contains certain information, you can send additional requests elsewhere. You can process that request and do something with it in particular. There's quite a few options, and this kind of a thing is what that PnP engine does to go from SharePoint to Azure to run PowerShell to customize SharePoint. It's very interesting stuff. So I think what I'm going to do right now is close the conversation on flow, and we'll switch over to the modern team side stuff. And then if we have time, which I think we will, we'll look at some of the PnP flow provisioning. Okay.
Can I just ask you a general question?
Yeah, general question. Go for it.
For you to implement flows, you want them to be robust. For me, I get they're more wonky than the SharePoint workflow. They fail.
So good question is, for those of you that have created flows, have you found that they're very robust? Because they don't seem to be. And I tend to agree with that. The experiences that I've had are kind of wonky, like you said. It's been hit or miss. That's why I haven't committed to using them seriously for anything. The Twitter thing was fun, but it didn't find every tweet every time. You know, it's not like when you post a Catapult Ignite tweet, it's not aware of it. It has to go look for it periodically, right? And you don't really have a control over how periodically does it go look. Also, there are certain limitations with different things, like in Twitter. Imagine if I scheduled a tweet to @mention you on Twitter every minute. That would be insane. That would be annoying. So the Twitter API that's available in Flow does not allow @mentions. You can hashtag things, but you can't @mention someone because then they would get alerted and that'd be a pain in the neck, you know. I had some issues with the tweet flows that it just didn't always succeed. They would just fail, like you said, at random. And I would try and try again, and it'd work, fail, work, fail. It was very inconsistent. So I think there's still some ground to be gained by Flow and some of the consistency that it has. Would I build any of my business process around it? No. Although I'm kind of about to in a different way, which I'll talk about in a little bit. Looks like we've got a question here in the chat. When an event is added to the calendar, add the event to the calendars of particular people. It should not show up as a separate calendar. How well does Flow integrate with Outlook calendar? That's a great question. I'm not sure. I've not done anything with the calendar actions or conditions myself. So I would say best bet is to take a look at them and see how it goes. I don't have any experience with them personally. If we have some time, maybe we can come back to that. I'm going to stop this recording.